Hello, everyone. Welcome again out to Paper versus Paper. And you have your host here, Coach Green Jean.
And I am Dr. Doula.
And we'd like to welcome you guys out back again to another online live discussion, Paper versus Paper. At this particular opportunity, we want to remind you all to please go to Coach Green Jean on YouTube to subscribe. We've been having a lot of encouraging online discussions with many of today's professionals, giving us insights and strategies related to building sustainable pathways for our young people. And this is so important for today, especially as we're going through quarantine and a global pandemic. And so we have our professionals come on and share wonderful insights and tools to assist us. Just again, as a reminder, you guys know that Andrea and myself, we host a pre-apprenticeship workshop for young people. At this particular opportunity, of course, during the quarantine, these classes are not in session. So therefore, we do have these e-learning opportunities for you and your young persons to be able to take advantage and listen to, again, the strategies and tools and techniques and just wonderful, amazing information that our guest professionals have to share. Now, guys, we're about to have an amazing time. We're going to slow walk this because we have a very, very special guest. For those that don't know, the actual foundation of this particular online discussion came from wanting to talk to this guest professional right here. One of the main things that we desire to do is to make sure that our students are prepared to be a sustainable asset with no matter what career path that they choose in life. And this particular guest right here, I thought would best represent giving information to our young people and to our parents to assist with their career path decisions and just having them think about that whole particular process. So today we have none other than Miss Latisa Kindred. Miss Latisa, thank you for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you all for inviting me.
We really are so thankful for having you with us today. I won't throw in the spoiler, but I'm again let Dr. Doula to go ahead and get started.
I'm going to let you start. Like he said, I was always hearing about this woman. I'm going to get all the names of the places wrong and stuff, but she's an electrician and she's a this, and I just really want to talk to her. And oh my goodness, he has been waiting to talk to you. He has been so excited to talk to you. And I would love if you would just, I find that people tell or talk about themselves a little differently than others describe them. I would love it if you would just take a moment and tell us about yourself. How did you get into this work in the first place?
Okay, so my mother was a union laborer, and she'd come home from the job dirty from head to toe, and she said, "Oh my God, the electricians, they stay clean all day long." She said there was a girl from the job, and she just walked around and looked up in the ceiling all day long. You know, she was very impressed. So she encouraged me to apply for the electrical apprenticeship. I was a mother. My son had to be about 2 when I first applied, 2, maybe 3. And She encouraged me to apply, and I applied and I got in. I didn't know what electricians did. I didn't know anything about being an electrician. So I became an apprentice. I started my apprenticeship in 1995. And that's the gist of what I've done. So 95, I began my apprenticeship. It wasn't easy. It was all new to me. I dealt with a lot of different adversities, racism, sexism, all of the above. I am a very strong-willed individual. I can stand up for myself, and I learned it from working in the trade.
Come on, girl.
Right. I had no choice. And then in 2007, I'd always said that I would love to teach, to give back, because that's the way my grandmother was one of those. My mother was in her own little silent way. And when the opportunity came at Simeon to teach there, I applied for it, and I crazy. I left the job on Saturday and I began teaching on Monday. So I jumped head into teaching, and I've been there since, and it's been a challenge, and it's been a very rewarding challenge because my students, not when they're in the classroom challenging me, but when they go out into the real world and I see them as successful young men and women, you know, I can see the fruit of my labor, and I know that I didn't waste my time.
Oh my goodness. And I love that because even in my husband's workshop, the intro to pre-apprenticeship that he does, there was at one of that's Daddy calling. Oof, I have to tell the boys to call him back. At one of the workshops that we've had, at some of them, we've had a couple of young ladies, and one of them was very uncomfortable because most of all of the other participants were boys. And I remember she says, I just don't know how I feel, being able to do this. This is like where all the boys are. And I said, well, girl, why do you think I'm here? I'm here. We're here. We're here. You got this. Tell me more, or tell us more about what that practically, I mean, if you could just give an experience, it's years and years of learning, but if there's just a basic thing that you could express, because a lot of times there still are, even in 2020, there are people that do not expect or do not think that, the trades is where a woman belongs. And it sounds crazy because it is the 21st century, but there are still people who believe that this is for men.
Yeah. So for me, like it was eye-opening because I was 20 years old, and the only men that I've had in my life up to that point were there to protect me, right? And I had never been disrespected by a man until I became a tradeswoman. And it was a challenge. So that's where I found my voice. I've never been soft-spoken. My family and friends can tell you that. But it was a different, totally different environment where men didn't care that I was a young woman in their presence. Men old enough to be my father didn't care that I was a young woman in their presence. So my voice then was cussing. I can cuss. So my way of responding to the negativity was to cuss. And I was able to have people, where they stop and say, oh, okay, well, they leave me alone, But as a teacher, the first class of students that I had, the class of 2009, one of the young ladies, I remember she tested number 69 out of 1,700. And she was very feminine, a tiny little girl. She was big busted, and I was ready to fight somebody before she even thought about going into the trade because I didn't want anybody messing with her. She was a brilliant young lady, and I suggested to her that she go to college instead of going into the trade because I didn't want to have to feel like I had to hurt somebody because they were treating that young lady the way that they treated me. But since that time, the first girl that I had go, really, she didn't go after high school. She graduated in 2008, and she went when the apprenticeship reopened in about 2012, and she was fine. And then the first one to go straight from Simeon was the class of 2015, and she was running circles around the boys in the classroom.
Wow.
And she was God. Yeah, she was an athlete, and she could hold her own. And I had no kind of doubt in my mind that she would be okay once she went out into the field. And she's a project. What are they calling her? She is a junior estimator, and she's ran her own jobs or something now for a Black electrical contractor in the local, and she's doing well. She's held her own. She got hurt on the job, and they liked her enough to hold on to her because of her work ethic and because of she's just a good kid. So today, I think there might be a second one. I can't think of how many girls. I think it's just 2. And the other one, that little crazy girl, she could hold her own. So as long as I can see that fire, because it takes a lot of fire to be somewhere, and to be somewhere with to be the only woman, to be the only girl, you cannot be the only Black person. There've been times when I was not only the only woman, but the only Black person on the job.
Come
around
on, sis.
people that were not used to being around Black people, and they doggone sure weren't used to being around Black women. So I feel more confident in young women who I see some fire in and encouraging them. And if they don't have the fire, some kind of way, try to find a way to inspire that fire.
Yes. Miss Latisa, we had lost your video.
I don't know how. I'm not that bright with this, computer.
If it's one thing that we could do is that if you didn't have, there we go. We got you back. You know, you've been, Andre, if you didn't have a question, I was going to come.
Of course I did, but I would give you a moment because I am over here just grinning.
You know, because when I met Ms. Latisa, they had we were at some awards ceremony, and they just shared with the millions of things that she has done to impact not only just young people, but the actual industry. I mean, I was just like so impressed. I was like, who is this woman? I really would like to know her so that she could actually be a part of what it is that I'm doing for these young people. And like, again, I'm just thankful that you could be here, you know, with us today. I'm honored. Thank you so much, Ms. Kindred. You know, right now we are being faced with a lot of difficulty, you know, of course, with the pandemic, the quarantine that we're going through right now. How has that been, you know, for you as an educator, you know, and with, you know, you and your personal life, and how that navigation works? You have a lovely daughter, and how is all that affecting you as you know, continue to move forward as a professional?
Oh, so professionally it's interesting because so there's more than one program, but I am the only electrical program that falls under CPS in Chicago Public Schools. So everything I do in the classroom, I do, and it's been becoming a challenge after all these years to come up with new material, right? And as time goes on, the students change, their ability level changes, and everything else. So this year has been a challenge period for me in the classroom. So now on top of the challenge, lo and behold, we get this pandemic where now you got to teach online some kind of way, right?
Right.
So last week was the first official week because the first couple of weeks after there was anticipation of going back to school. So Monday was the first official day of remote learning, where I had to really, really sit down and figure out what I'm going to try to do for these kids. And I'm seeing as a teacher that the students are being the exact same type of teenager that I was, okay? Where if they don't have anybody putting their feet on their necks to make them do things, they take it for granted. And they know, they've heard that that remote learning doesn't count. So like I had a kid that last day of school tell me, well, this don't count. I ain't doing nothing. And I haven't seen or heard from him since, right? So I'm on Google Classrooms 3 hours a day with the students and an hour a day with office time. And my daughter, her work starts at 8:30. Mine starts at 11. She's usually pretty self-motivated where I don't have to put my foot on her neck. Her brother, my son, I'd have been killing him while I was online. And my daughter, she's different. So she's a little bit more self-motivated than he is. Even though she hasn't, she still needs a little bit of me, but she doesn't need as much of me. So on Wednesday, for the first time, I did a virtual meeting with my students. And I saw that they were just waking up. I saw why I wasn't seeing them online because their parents, a lot of parents are still working. A lot of parents are still trying to provide for their families and stuff, and they don't necessarily have the energy to. We think our teenagers, they put on this front for us like they got it, right? They don't have it. They don't have it at all. So I called parents to remind them. The same young man that told me that it didn't count, his mother dragged him out of bed, cussing him out when I called her.
Yes.
Online and and the parents just don't know. All they know mostly is what their children are telling them, and they are the best fabricators in the whole wide world. And just like us, like when I was a kid, we had things to do and we didn't do them till an hour before.
Exactly.
You know, our parents came home from work. They're doing the same thing, which means that they're not doing their schoolwork. So what day was that? Thursday, grades went in. I was getting emails with assignments at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And I'm like, come on now. So I have to find a way of helping them. I can't help them a whole lot. I can communicate with parents. I can email and let them know. Let them know that these grades are going to better their grades, not to give up, not to stop.
Yes.
And now I have to try to find some exciting stuff to make them want to log on. Because like, do I sleep? Do I FaceTime my friend? Do I play the game, or do I do my schoolwork? Like, who wants to do schoolwork, right?
Exactly.
But they have to, you gotta find a way to motivate them. So that's the challenge. And just seeing them motivated me, because being home for this time, I'm never still. I was looking in my phone at pictures, and I'm always moving, always doing something. So this has been good for, that sounds crazy, doesn't it? It's been good for me in this pandemic to have to be able to still communicate with my students, because they keep me energized. It keeps me on top of my child the way I need to be, and it keeps the kids engaged.
I just love it. You've said so many things that just make me smile. The first thing I'm going to say is my husband has never smiled so hard. He is so happy to be talking to you. And I'm hoping that at some point you can, I'm hoping that at some point, should your schedule permit in the future, that you can be a guest professional for the workshops that he does, and talk to the young people, the youth, about the electrical work. I won't ask you to commit to that, but I did want to plug that because, oh my goodness, he is, I mean, this is just really amazing. We have had the opportunity to have a friend who was also an electrician for some years, and it's just a wonderful thing. That was one point. The second point that I was going to make was about just what you were talking about as far as the motivation for teachers. And I think that, I'm an educator as well, and people don't fully understand how much the work that teachers do, how much of it is really, people call it a thankless profession, and I agree. I don't think teachers are paid properly and all those things. However, the students, and what you talked about earlier, even talking about seeing the fire in a student, really does motivate teachers and educators to continue to work, even when there are all these other challenges going on around them. It is really a motivator. And I'm really glad that you have had, calling parents and things like that. People don't realize how, I mean, even with you not being at school, you're having to do that work. Hey, I haven't seen so-and-so. Hey, I haven't done this or done that or done the other. That is absolutely phenomenal.
I had a teacher in high school that did the same thing. It's the reason why. My junior year, I failed honors physics because I was just that genius. I got a B, and I was just the greatest. And I went to class and I showed him that I wasn't going to be the person that he thought I was. He called my mother. When I say he called her, and I got so tired, and she got to the point where she's like, okay, you be stupid if you want. Senior year, I had that same man for regular physics, not honors anymore, for regular physics. And it hit me like, this man really thinks the world of me. He really sees something in me, and I need to show him that I am all who he sees. So that's why I call home, because Mr. Saxon, wherever he is, he made a huge impression on my life, because he cared enough about me to try to make sure that I cared about myself. And that's what I try to do with these kids.
And I want to just give a plug out for that, because sometimes, I don't know what other teachers are doing that right now or able to or whatever, but I just want to give a plug out for that in general. Sometimes as an educator, when a teacher calls home, it's seen as something, and I've said this before, because I've also been a homeschool educator as well. But I've said this before, there are some parents that are just getting an opportunity to really engage their children for the first time. And so when a teacher is calling home, it's like, oh, well, she's a little bit whatever. Anyway, Ma, she always on me, Ma. She act like she don't see the other people in the class. She's always saying this. I don't think she like me.
My mother said, so you mean to tell me another teacher doesn't like you? You know, I'm like, oh, I can't use that line anymore. You know, all the teachers. Yeah.
It's like, I just want to just give that whatever for teachers for the work that, we try to do when we are in a classroom setting and trying to engage the students, being such a major influence on young people. What does that feel like to really understand? I know with my husband, well, I'm trying to figure out how not to get feedback. I'm still getting it. So let me
get back in. I know with my husband, when he is, when we're doing the workshops, he's always talking about everyone won't necessarily decide to go into a trade. Often people look at construction as, well, if you're not smart enough to go to here, just do a trade.
And that's the worst part of the situation, where they put kids that I'm not even trying to deny the value of my students, but
exactly.
It takes a lot of brain power to be a tradesperson, and the math alone is of the greatest importance, and people take that for granted.
My husband often says, and I'm sure he can speak for himself, but I'm gonna talk because once he gets started talking, then I have to kind of try to find my spot again.
Okay.
But one of the things he always talks about with the young people is the fact that when you think that construction trades and of any kind are an alternative, if you're not good enough to go to college, no, these are the people that are literally, they're the ones fashioning the buildings that you sit in. They're the ones that are when you sit down, if you're sitting in a building right now, they're the ones determining like you talked about physics and all of those things. They're the ones determining, okay, will this support this? And understanding those things and making sure that that building is sound and that it will stand and that it will be safe for people. And for it to be viewed as a thing, well, if you're not good enough for college, just go do a trade. You really put so many people at danger with a laissez-faire attitude of what it means to build.
As Black people, you know how many degreed electricians I've worked with? So as Black people, our degrees don't necessarily equal the same entry level of success that it may be for our counterparts, right? So I've worked with so many degreed electricians where they went to college, they got their degrees and they went to work, and this was a better choice for them financially, where they can provide better and do better for their families than using their degrees to go to work. I know people that are playing here. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep
cutting you off. Continue. No.
Who is blessed? I know some young women who badass young women. Their apprentice electricians were teachers. And guess what? The teaching, even with the promise of having their tuition reimbursed because of staying with the system for so long, they had to pay those student loans. So they're and they're being the greatest electricians that they can be, and they're able to pay their bills. So, we as Black people especially, we have no room to be turning our noses up and comparing degrees to construction and turning our noses up at it.
Say it, sis. Okay. This whole hierarchical thing of things, historically we, up until, because I can't get on a rant, but I won't. Up until some decades ago, we were the builders. When we were, emancipated, whether it was enslaved Black people or what, we were the builders. We were the ones. Mm-hmm. And we were the ones that decided that the value that it had, that this other thing is better. And I understand the context of it, but I think it's important to understand that, if you, can y'all hear the feedback?
Just a little bit, but you go ahead.
Okay, all right, because I'm over here trying to manage it and cover the mic from the wind and everything. I think it's important to understand, especially, because like I always say, I believe in speaking specifically to Black people about Black people. It's important for us to understand, my husband he has a degree in architecture. There are some, he's a construction superintendent, one of the few ones in all of Chicago. How many construction superintendents that are Black have you met, babe?
My cousin is a construction superintendent.
There you go.
Yeah, my cousin, he's been a carpenter for 24, well, he's a year behind me. I'm almost 25 years, so he's a year behind me. But he's been with the same contractor for about 20 years, and he's the construction superintendent. Yes.
Amazing.
I know too. Look, I know too.
You see what I'm saying? Right. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Personally, I know too.
Oh, I'm getting in trouble from Mama Maureen, babe. She just called. Ooh, I'm gonna get it today. Okay. I'll send her a message in a second. But I know I'm gonna get it in trouble. Oh, I'm gonna get in trouble. Okay, but especially from South Africa. But what I wanted to say was, there are some positions you mentioned, degree people that you're working with. There are some positions that he has gotten from the beginning of his career. He's been in this now for over 20 years. My husband has, but there are some positions that he was able to get because he had that degree.
Right.
And we just have to know and understand what we're doing here as Black people in the United States. We have my
job. I had our union offered this electrical construction technology associate's degree, and I had been in school forever, and so I finished off my degree by getting that getting the degree in electrical construction technology. And when my position came up, I was able to get it because I had that associate's degree. So yes, a degree can make a big difference in what you're doing, especially for us as African Americans. The nepotism, the cronyism, it doesn't benefit us the way that it does other people. So I understand that wholeheartedly.
And you have to kind of stack the deck for yourself. We talk to our sons ourselves, and we tell them, we say, listen, you need to create options, and that's what I call it. When you have these different ways of not only just thinking of being successful, but supporting my family, this, that, and the other, doesn't mean you can't pursue the thing that makes your heart beat, and all those things. But stack the deck for yourself, give yourself additional options. And that's where having skills that you can do and things you can do with your hands. We're both alumni of Tuskegee University, and we admire the work of Booker T. Washington. He was our founder. And one of the things that's so powerful is he talked about and even advocated for people to be able, for Black people that were that had been emancipated and all of that, to not lose the industries that they had, because we were the ones who worked with our hands at one time. People say we built this country. We did. Okay, we built the nation, and then we let it go because it looked like someone else's ice was colder than our ice was.
That's a good way of putting it. That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. And we just need to know, get your, for those that are watching, because there is some involvement. I hope that you will, first of all, I was looking on Facebook, and if you have a question that you would like to ask our sister while she's here, Latisa, I hope it's okay if I call you Latisa.
Yes, there's a bunch of tradeswomen on here saying hi. So to my trade sisters,
yes,
thank you all for tuning in.
If you want to call some of them out, you please feel free.
She said she went to Tuskegee too.
All right,
Ella Jones. Ella Jones is a retired sprinkler fitter. Angel Vance, another electrician. Simone Holmes is a plumber.
Hey guys.
Pete Thurston, he's an electrician, a degree electrician. He said he wants to pawn off his degree. Shaquille Joyner, one of my former students. So DeMonte Wright, another former student. Let's see. My cousin, he's a fellow electrician. So yeah.
If you all have, if there's anybody listening, because I do see some activity on Facebook too. If there's somebody that's listening, if you have a question, you know, we actually have Latisa is here and an educator in the school system as well. So if there's a question that you would like to ask, you know, please ask that question for your young person while we're on the broadcast, because we're not going to be on too much longer, but we want to make sure if you have a question, if there's something that you know, if you look at your young person and you say, hey, I think this is something that would benefit them, and I really wish that everybody would see, especially Black people, that we would all see the value of working with our hands, you know, and having that additional skill set. But if you do, please make sure that you ask that question too. Okay, honey, I'm gonna give you a chance to talk.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the main reasons why we started this paper versus paper broadcast with today's professionals, to give opportunity for you all to provide again the strategies and insights into what it means to work in your crafted talent. You know, because we battle so much with Western mindset versus indigenous mindset. There was a time when it was a responsibility in our communities to know how to feed, clothe, shelter, heal, and protect yourselves. And because of the curse of comparison, because we just lost sight of those indigenous values, we began to think that other things were important. And we stopped leaving sustainable pathways for the next generation because we were so self-imposed about what we wanted and how we wanted to degree ourselves. Like Andrea said, I graduated with a degree of architecture in '93 at Tuskegee, and it was at the architecture board and doing my thesis project. I was doing a farmer's market for Montgomery, Alabama. That was my thesis project. And I was sitting behind, I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. You know, I was having fun while, you know, interacting with my class. I was playing basketball at the time, but when it came down and the rubber met the road and I had to realize that this was something that I was going to make a livelihood with, you know, I was just in it because it was, you know, something that seemed appropriate because it was, you know, quote unquote, being an architect. But that's why we push, you know, within our pre-apprenticeship, and I know you do too, Ms. Kindred, for our young people to have alternative means of skill sets so that they could be versatile as they proceed down that career path, because you never know. And I believe, and like my wife and I, what we share a lot is that when you connect into the world with not just your head, but your hands and your heart, you begin to understand and develop and allow to well without you the crafted talent that you were designed to input in the world with a purpose. It doesn't necessarily have to be a trade, but you won't discover that if you just in it for the head. And I think that's one thing that Western society has, you know, placed upon us, and that we have to be careful that we begin to restore that dignity of labor. That's why we deal with so many crises.
When I was an apprentice, my first year, the first person I worked with, he told me, you know, this is not going to be all you do for the rest of your life. And I'm like, huh? And you hear all your life, like, oh, you know, you work for 30 years and then you retire, 30, 40 years, you retire. He said, no. He said, this is probably your first career. You're going to have multiple careers. And everything he said came true. I never imagined. I figured I was an electrician. This is a good job, and I would be an electrician for the rest of my life. And here I am on my second career, trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. You know, there's no reason to have tunnel vision when it comes to our futures. We have to think bigger than just my students. I'm the electrician, and no one ever encouraged me to think about being a contractor. No one ever encouraged me to think about it was a one-track path to be an electrician, and that's it. And that means that you're working for someone, that you can never be a leader in what you do because you're obligated to somebody else. So I've tried to impart the whole idea of thinking outside of the box and bigger than just going to work for somebody else for the rest of your life on my students.
That's right. This, and what I feel that you are saying and you're calling forth, Miss Kindred, is that spirit of entrepreneurship, that spirit of leadership. And no matter what you do, be the best, at it. Wow. So I do want to, again, while we are beginning to bring this broadcast to close. And
I got a question for you. You said ask questions. Okay,
yeah.
so the young lady that went to Tuskegee, she was asking you, how would she go about finishing her degree in construction management, but also waiting to have that she's waiting to become an apprentice plumber. So do you have any suggestions for her to work on her degree in construction management?
Wow. So I guess I have to find out kind of like where she's at. Like, is she working in the industry right now as a plumber, or she's looking forward?
Can I connect her to you?
You sure can.
Okay, Shantae, I'm going to connect the two of you all.
Yeah, please do, and I can
help. And you also have some of your classmates from 97 years ago at Tuskegee. I'm just kidding.
97 years ago.
I mean, we're only 1 year apart, so I'm talking about myself too. But some of your classmates are now over some of those departments at Tuskegee, so perhaps you can get some information directly from some of them.
Right. A gentleman by the name of Roderick Fluker, who actually graduated in 93 with me, is actually a department head at the School of Architecture. And he also can actually, if she's still there, can put her in contact with the construction
because those
management
two
head.
Is construction management, I think, is still with architecture, and it's still connected in some ways.
In some way, yes, it is.
In some way. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So like I said, I finished in architecture and actually went straight out into project construction management. And that was something I wanted to be a lot more on hands than just behind the board. I figured I was more of a people person, and I was more tactile in my approach to what I thought I was good at. Then I eventually went into business for myself. I was a kitchen bathroom remodeler for 7 years, and then felt that I wanted to go back into the construction industry, and that's what led me back into doing being a construction superintendent. So I've been like you said, Latisa, I've wore several different hats, and I've always been able to provide for my family because of just having those multiple skill sets.
Right. And that's important. And never stop educating yourself. Never stop. Never get to a point where you think that you've arrived, because paradigms shift. Like right now, we don't know what's going to happen after
Come on, sis.
Over with. So just try to stay ahead of the game as much as you can.
You hit it right on the head. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something, Dr. Doula?
I was, but I can wait, I guess.
No, I was just saying, we need to be prepared. And you made the point earlier, Ms. Kindred, even though that we are going through this quarantine time right now, this is something similar to, I like to say, a global reset. It doesn't have to be all gloom and doom. This is a time as parents, we could begin to reevaluate, ourselves. And like a friend of mine said, we can use this opportunity to slow down, to catch up, to allow some of those things that we allowed that we put on the back burner to come front and center, so that we could begin to fulfill some of those purposes that were close to our heart. To I was trying to think of the word, it didn't come to me, but redesign, classify ourselves into figuring out how we want to make an impact.
Reinvent ourselves.
There you go. Reinvent ourselves in the area that we want to make an impact, because it's all about the next generation. And if you're not leaving an impact where you feel purpose, it's not about just working a job and collecting a 401k at the end of, and retiring at the end of so many years. Of course, that's important, and having that set up. But, as Africans, it was important to making sure that we were passing down skills and values to the next generation. And we did, and I feel that we can be more impactful when we're in a place of purpose. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to do, to be with our kids, provide, this time of e-learnership, e-learning on the computer. You do that in your classes. You want your children that you instruct to take more responsibility and leadership, because this is where it starts, you know. And like I said, just because we're in quarantine don't mean that you have to stop your grind. You know, it's tough, it's challenging, but we want to continue forward. Latisa, is there anything else that you'd like to share, you know, with your students? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead. I didn't want you to close out before I said what I wanted to say. I love the emphasis that you've placed on when you mentioned that, you know, having different careers and even like a reinventing of yourself, you know, reinventing, because I think that sometimes we have gotten stuck, you know. Some of us have been afraid to reinvent. You know, I started at Tuskegee University with in electrical engineering, and back then they weren't, in my opinion, it wasn't as collaborative as it is now, and I knew I wanted to work more with people. So I doubled in math, and then I just finished in math. And then I have my master's, and then in education, and my doctorate in educational leadership with a specialization in curriculum and instruction. And so I'm like, okay, my husband, when I finished, the work that I did was really looking at relationship education. And that's something my husband and I had done. But I am a birth worker now. And every other day, I'm like, what in the world?
Where did that come from?
Where did that come from? I mean, of course, I say now, okay, my ancestors, I guess, you know, that's what it just like, okay, this is what we need you to do. But I think sometimes we are fearful about for lack of better words, not being able to live out whatever has been described as the American dream, that I can work the job this many years and I can retire, like my husband said, this way, and it will be this way. And we have just become comfortable, some of us, especially as Black people, with pursuing that, with letting that be what we were trying to do. But I think that there's always been a need for us to dream more, to not get stagnant, to try something different. Not because someone fired us, but because I know in my husband and I relationship, there have been times when we've got inklings and unctions that it was, especially when we had our own business some years ago, that it was time to move on to a different thing. And when we didn't follow it, it was like, now everything has to crash around us before we will, you know, move. So now it's in desperation when it could have been with much intention. I could have done this intentionally. And the other point that I wanted to make was just more along the lines of my husband and I was always talking to the young people about head, heart, hands. Having the head knowledge, how important the intellect is. You mentioned that when you said, you know, math is important. At the hotline this morning, math is important to what we are, what's being done. You know, the young people, they really get that when they're in that workshop and they pull out that tape measure, or even before that, he shows them a paper and it's like, okay, here's the tape measure, you know, and we're talking about fractions. And now we're dealing with young people who up to this point just thought that it was a math teacher's torture technique to have to use, you know, a ruler. But no, now you can't even measure this piece of wood if you can't understand what a fraction is. You know, you have to be able to understand certain things. So that's the head. And then the hands, I'll say next, is having something that you can do with your hands. My mom used to call it having a hustle. Can you do anything, baby?
Come on now, you better talk about the hustle.
You know, I mean, whatever, I don't care. You know, I know now everybody has to be licensed to do, like, you got to be licensed to do like even hair. But back when college, I was like, girl, come here, let me braid your hair for you. $25 went a long way. You know, just having an understanding. But even more than that, when these young, the last workshop, it was the workshop that I was like, I don't know how he's going to do this one without making a total mess. The kids got to put a hole in the wall. And how many people don't have doors where the doorknob just goes to the wall or whatever, and it stays that way if they didn't put a door stop or whatever. And the kids were able to repair a wall segment. They repaired a wall. So they said, oh, I love watching the light bulbs go off. I can do that.
Right.
I can do that. As he's teaching them these things they can do with their hands. And then even the heart part, knowing how to work with people. I know that there's plenty of things you can do in the work that you do that you can do by yourself, but how much of it depends on you knowing how to deal with people?
A lot. Teaching, all of it.
You understand? You know,
right.
And even when you were doing the work on construction sites and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just you. It's not just this independent.
That's what these kids. It's all about me. No, baby, it's not all about you. And nobody's gonna like you as much as your mama likes you. So get that out your head right now and understand you have to find a way to get along with people. I understand exactly what you're saying.
And I wanted to say that and just give a plug out. You know, one of the things on the last part I was going to say about the whole reinventing. One of the things that my husband said, oh my goodness.
I had to show my favorite picture.
Okay, I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to finish this point first and then I have to say, what? Okay. One of the things that my husband did when we were deciding, you know, do we want to be self-employed and continue with this entrepreneurial work? Do you want to do this, that, and the other? He didn't know it then, but even back then, he was saying, put me back up first. You distracted me with this picture. Thank you. Okay, I got to talk about that picture. You can't do that.
That's my favorite.
That's the favorite right there. Okay, but I just wanted to say this, you know, he actually said to himself, we had conversation. I said, what do you want to do? He says, I like working with my hands, because he was actually going to try to, you know, he wanted to, after his architecture degree, when he realized he wasn't working with his hands, he was like, maybe I'll go and do plumbing. Maybe I'll go and be a journeyman plumber, you know, and he really was going to pursue that for a while, you know, but it's one of those things that he's like, I want to work with my hands still. And he said, but I also want to use the intellect that I have. I have an architecture degree. And he says, but I also want to have some movement. I like to be in different places. And this work that he does allows him to do all of that, to see new people, to engage people in different ways. I have to brag on him for a second, because he is often there. You know, when you do any kind of contract work, you work based on referrals. I cannot tell you the number of times that he has come home and said, you know, this hospital, this building, working and building out spaces in Merchandise Mart out downtown, doing all these different things with people from around the world that are setting up their companies, that they say, I just want to send your company a letter. I need to send them a letter about how good you are, how we want to work with you. There are clients that have decided they want to work with him because he knows how to not only work with his head and his hands, but he knows how to deal with people. And so I just wanted to emphasize all those points, because they're so important to the work that he does. And now you can put that picture up and you can let her tell you why all that gorgeousness was going on. Wait, y'all.
What was happening here, Miss Kindred? Because you know, me and my wife, we love this outfit.
There's an organization of Black electricians called I2R, and they gave me an award at their second annual Black History Month gala. Wow. And who was upstairs? I can't remember. I think it was something like the Richard Ridgway Award. That's exactly what it was. Richard Ridgway was a Black man who had to sue our local in order to, because of unfair hiring practices and things like that. And because of his sacrifice, he never was able to complete his apprenticeship. However, 1,500 Black and Hispanics were guaranteed spots in the apprenticeship because of him. So that's the award that they gave me this year.
Congratulations, sis.
Thank you.
Beautiful, and a beautiful award to receive from an individual with an amazing legacy of sacrifice.
Yes, he passed last year, but I was able to touch bases with him over the last 5 or 6 years. And despite the fact that he never became an electrician, he was still a project manager, estimator for electrical contractors. He worked in Saudi Arabia. He was able to go around the world and follow his dreams despite. So there's no one way to get to anywhere you want to go. And that's an important lesson that we have to understand, that because we feel like we have no other choice doesn't mean that it's our only choice. We have to be able to reinvent ourselves and find other ways of making ourselves happy. Yeah.
Wow.
See, I was gonna say, well, what closing words would you have? But I think those words right there
that was
is
it
what
right
we should
there.
leave it with. That was it right there.
And thank you all for including me in this. I appreciate it. This has been a great opportunity. Y'all just put a whole lot of stuff on my mind and about trying to think about what I need to do for myself. And yes, thank you. I appreciate this.
Now, we really appreciate you. And this was the actual purpose of having this online discussion. We want to, again, to encourage, our audience and those people who have joined us today on this live discussion with Miss Latisa Kindred to please go to YouTube right now and subscribe to Coach Green Jean so that you can be notified when we have these particular important talks with today's professionals, providing us with these insights, so that we can prepare ourselves and prepare our young people for the next generation. Look at me, I'm mixing. Prepare them to be sustainable change agents for the next generation. That's so important. So we want to thank you guys again for joining us. Ms. Latisa, thank you for all of the helpful information that you provided for us. Dr. Doula, any closing remarks from you as well?
I just wanted to know, well, first of all, I'm going to say this. I just want to say thank you, sis. Anytime that Black women are willing to stand in a space that many people say they're not welcome in. I mean, if you're talking about being in a space, Black men deal with their things and then Black women deal with their things. To stand in a space where people say you don't belong, and to not by simply saying, yes, I do, but by showing the work that says, oh, I belong here.
Right.
You are also a trailblazer in that regard. There are young people that will forever know your name and say, whether they went into the construction trade, whether they went on to become an electrician or anything, how much you influenced them. And I pray that you are able to hear those words with your ears, the way that the elder that passed away was able to hear from you. I pray you're able to hear those words while you can still hear them in this realm. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
If there is, I know that you're teaching and doing, but if there is someone that really wanted to just know more and reach out to you, perhaps you could refer them to someone or whatever who could answer questions. Is there some way that people can you tell them? Because we also do it on a convert this to a podcast. Can you say the ways that people can contact you?
You can contact me by email at lykindred@gmail.com. It's at the bottom of the screen. I think, yeah, it's coming on the bottom of the screen. And make sure in the subject, do some type of indication that you saw the podcast for Coach Green Jean. And then I'll know that you're coming from there. I can't even think of the words right now, but
paper versus paper, yes.
Make sure you associate your email with the fact that you have questions from the podcast.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so
much. I
much.
love it, babe.
Can I say thank you to all of my friends and family on Facebook who stopped by and say hi?
Please, because James Robinson also said, he said, I see you, James Robinson. So it's probably a lot of people.
You know him?
No, I know.
He's an architect who's retired.
Oh, wow.
His son, this is how it goes. So his son was my former student, and he was one of those super supportive parents. And his son is now a project engineer for a Black construction company here in the city. And his son, every year, at least, I get one field trip, site visit.
Wow.
Because he facilitates that. And I'm telling your husband before we got started, his son was in the first class of seniors that I got when I began teaching. They hated my guts.
Yes!
But I took them on a field trip to a construction site, an electrical contractor who I worked for. I picked up the phone and asked him, can I bring these kids over? And we walked across the street from the school to this field trip. And that obviously stuck with this kid because every year, if I don't reach out to him, he'll reach out to me to see if we want to do a site visit. Yeah.
Isn't that
Look at
amazing?
you.
He's not a kid. He's a grown man. He should be almost 30. So let me not.
Oh, that is so awesome. I'm just so excited about this. I'm
It's
so excited
amazing
about it.
what we can do when we stick together.
That's right. Any other people that you want to go ahead and acknowledge on the broadcast right now, Miss Latisa?
My family, my friends, anybody who's ever supported me, the parents, the students. I see you all, you grown-ups. I see you all. I see that you are grown and have grown into amazing people.
Yes.
Just any and everybody who's ever supported me, I appreciate you.
Yes. Well, thank you
sis.
so much again, Miss Latisa Kindred, for taking time out. And for our family, our friends, and those that are supporting us and those that are viewing us right now, please go to Coach Green Jean on YouTube. This video will be archived so that it could be pulled up for later use on that playlist, Paper versus Paper, along with various other professionals that we've spoken to, videos just like this, where you can use this opportunity to sit down with your family, with your children, with your students, again, to learn sustainable pathways into your crafted talent so that you're making an impact that matters. And so as we close out, we wanted to just go ahead and make a quick plug for our 3H pre-apprenticeship workshops that were being held at Prairie State. Go ahead, Ms. Kindred.
I'm trying to wave, but I don't know which way to move. So here,
Okay. Yes. So right now during quarantine, of course, we're not holding our classes, but eventually when things settle down, please allow your young people to come out to visit us at Prairie State. We join on 4 to 5 hour workshops on Saturdays that you can find out the information on CoachGreenGene.com. For young people,
12 to 17, right?
From kids, from young people ages 12 to 17, where they work in a controlled environment with professionals to just actually learn different trades and skills, just to get insight into that area to find out if this is something that would interest them as a career path, even if it's not a career path. Again, as Indigenous principles, as Africans, we always understood the importance about knowing how to feed, clothe, shelter, heal, and protect ourselves. Skill sets are important to building up and bringing out those crafted talents within us so that we're making sustainable impact for the next generation. We love you guys. We thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kindred. We so appreciate you. We're going to have you back again in the future. So don't go off. We're just going to show this outro video. And we hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're going to do some intentional activation because each and every one of you guys have a special gift.
Feel like this was a wonderful program. Felt like I was comfortable and like this was like a second family to me. So I just wanted to say thank you guys.
Learning how to use the different tools was really cool, that I didn't know like what to do with them, and like really cool to learn how to use the drill.
Oh yeah.
Cutting the wood with the handsaw.
Yeah, it was.
Drilling and undrilling the wood.
Oh wow, great,
I think the hardest part was probably sawing it, cutting it in half.
When we went on the computer software.
The computer software, you thought that was pretty cool?
Mm-hmm.
The saws.
The saws?
Yeah. I think they could help me in a lot of ways. When I grow up, I plan to be an animation artist. Measure stuff, learn how to draw.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, guys.
See